Well, given that Margaret Atwood warned me against trying to organize an all-women's conference, I think it's very gracious of her to agree to appear. She would have been here yesterday to address the decline of the male and the rise of the female, but her older brother was being honored, and as she put it to me, family comes first. Margaret?
I do things the old-fashioned way. And, this is my mic. That is my timer. I'm standing right in front of it. I don't know. I did warn Moses against doing an all-female thing, but as you can see, he never listens to a word I say. And I also told him that he didn't really have any big ideas, and he didn't listen to that either, and said he was sure I would think of something. So I wondered whether I should talk to you about some of the things that people are currently asking me to write about. Today I got a request to write a piece on chickens. I declined. Yesterday I got a request to write a piece on death. I've gotten several requests recently to write pieces on death. And I did say, why are you asking me? Just a little while ago, I was being asked to write pieces on menopause. I declined. And before that, I was being asked to write pieces on gender wars. I declined. Before that, I was writing pieces on poetry, and a lot of poetry is about death. So I think we've now come full circle. I did do a thing about death. It was a young man from Germany, a very nice young man, and he had a project, and his project was this. When Polaroid went out of business, he bought up all the black and white Polaroid film and put it in a freezer. And he also got a container of developer. And then he started contacting writers all around the world. And he asked them to come into a cemetery with him and have him take their picture with a black and white Polaroid camera, out of which he immediately whips the film and plunges it into a bucket of developer that he takes with him. You can see that I did this. It was too eerie, I had to do it. It was the Mount Pleasant Cemetery. We did it in the sprinkling forest. Some people have not got the sprinkling idea, and instead of sprinkling, they have put the ashes in a donut-like circle around the trees. So that landscape is now quite peculiar. But after that, we went and sat on a park bench in the cemetery, and he did the next part of his project, which was an interview about death. And he told me some interesting things. One is that all of the writers under 30 and all of the writers over 60 agreed to do this. But the ones in between, that would be Josie's core market. They did not want to do the death project. The ones under 30, of course, thought they were never going to die, so it didn't bother them. The ones over 60 knew it was on the menu. But in between, they were too busy doing sex with Josie. So they didn't actually want to talk about death. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about death other than adding one more thing, which was what we ended up talking about was what was the most ecologically correct way of disposing of your dead body. And we decided that cremation is now kind of out. It's very energy consumptive, and it releases a lot of greenhouse gases. There is a new Swedish technique in which you get you get quick frozen, very deep frozen, and then you get jiggled, and you turn into little pink bits, which are easily sprinkled about, not leaving any sort of unsightly lumps anywhere. But we did wonder whether that would be also quite energy consumptive. And we passed on to the idea of natural burial, and there are people working on this in our province right away. Right now, they have not yet got a farmer who's willing to, or possibly a provincial government who's willing to give them the permission to do that. But when they get it, I'll be there, and I intend to have a bit later. I intend to have some grave goods buried with me to give archaeologists of the future something to think about. I thought maybe I would get a toaster buried with me, or yeah, a manicure set, or something that would give them something to write papers about, having to do with strange religious practices in the icons that were worshipped in the early 20th century. However, instead of talking about death, I'm going to go on to the other thing that people are really asking me to talk and write about a lot these days, and that is called the future of reading. Now, you may think that the future of reading and death are the same thing, but they're not. They're not, because reading is, believe it or not, on the increase. People often don't define this question very carefully. I think the segment is called The Medium and the Massage, etc. And I do remind you that Marshall McLuhan wrote his great book, The Gutenberg Galaxy, just down the street and around the corner. And it appeared in, I think, 1960 when I was 20. So we've been thinking about this for really a long time. People are not reading less. People are reading more. But they're reading more in different ways. Reading is now not the same as books. Some of it is books, but a lot of it is on your computer or on your e-reader, and particularly your computer, because you cannot do this wondrous social media and all of that kind of thing unless you can read. You have to be literate in order to use those tools. Where does it tie in with what Diane Francis was saying? The education of women is going to be the single largest driving force in the coming world economy, said they said at Davos. They had a whole session on this. And a lot of that education of women is going to become possible through the internet. Because you can connect with a lot of sites and people globally, you don't have to leave your town and go somewhere else. You don't have to actually go to school to become literate once you get the idea. So literacy, the education of women correlates with falls in the birth rate. We know this. It's very well known. So everybody who wants women not to be educated is also voting for overpopulation. Educate women, the birth rate goes down, the economies of those countries immediately start to improve. What are the two biggest factors in educational performance? They happen to be having a school library with a librarian in your school. If you change nothing else, marks go up 20%. And what did we do just recently in this country? We got rid of all the school libraries. Brilliant move. People are now working very hard to get them back. But there is a direct correlation. The single biggest factor in the success of an individual child is having books in the home. Just having those books there, you might think it's reading to your kids and all those kinds of things, but just having the books there, you can predict the success of a child simply with that one factor alone. So this is not an unimportant thing, looking at the future. What people usually mean when they say the future of reading, they're usually talking about publishing. And the publishers are certainly talking about publishing because they're all running around in circles at the moment. And what they're running around in circles about is not what I would call the future of reading. It is the future of paper books, because they're seeing some flattening of those markets, while on the other hand, sales of e-books are going up precipitously. How far will this go? We don't know, but there's a really simple reason for that. They're cheap. And the other simple reason for that is they're immediate. You do not have to go anywhere or wait. You can have that book that you want right then. There are some downsides to that culture, and one of them is that you don't experience serendipity. You don't walk into a bookstore, browse around, see something else you might like while looking for that one book you're searching for. There's going to be a rearrangement of the whole method of distributing books, and it's happening very, very quickly. I did a blog posting. Woo. When I started this, plus my tweeting, one of my followers sent a tweet that said, "I love it when old people blog." But I'll tell you, we have longer attention spans than some. So I did a blog posting. It was called 3 Reasons for Keeping Paper Books. And they weren't the reasons you might think of: the wonderful sensuous feel of the paper, the pretty covers, that smell of the new book that some of my commenters posted on my blog posting. There were 3 very practical reasons, and they were: 1, solar flares; 2, energy shortages; and 3, internet overload. And just to sum that up for you, would you keep your will in e-form and in no other form? No, you would not. Number 1, it could vanish. Number 2, it could be hacked. And number 3, it's illegal. Wills have to be on paper as of now. So paper is still going to be there, and there's another very good reason paper is still going to be there, and it is this. What is going to drive the future is going to be available energy. And Diane started talking about somebody. It wasn't Diane. Who started talking about oil? Diane. Diane was talking about oil. We do not yet have a substitute for oil. And until we get one, we're going to go down this path we're already on, which is leading to doom. And do the numbers. Maybe what Faith Popcorn was thinking about my futurism had to do that in the future, in one of my novels, a man invents a way of ridding the earth of the human population. It is a fun-filled, joke-packed adventure story, but not everybody saw it that way, and I can tell you that we're well on the way of being able to do that. All you need is a hemorrhagic virus that spreads through the air, and that's it. So nature or somebody will take care of this overpopulation of which you speak, Diane, unless people do it for themselves. But meanwhile, all of this internet stuff is directly tied to available energy. So I suggest you keep those paper books of which you're really fond. Keep the ones you're really fond of, and then when all the lights go off and the internet crashes, you will still be able to read them by the light of your cozy candle. Thank you.
I love your purse. That's splendid. By the way, that method of burial is called promessa.
Moses has something to share with us.
Yes, the method of burial that you were talking about is called,
bits.
Yes, promessa. Yes. The woman who invented it was here at Idea City. And her thought is not that you scatter the pink bits, but that you can actually fashion them into a new object that might reflect some of your interests and affections. The example she gave was of recreating yourself as a bird bath, for example, if you love birds. And I mention that because I know that you and Graham are very fond of birds and are passionate bird watchers.
Moses, I don't want a pink bird bath. Thanks.
Well said. Thanks, sweetheart. Bye.